Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Are we on? Yeah, there we go. There we go. Thank you for attending. This is the meeting of the Construction and Demolition Subcommittee. If we could all stand, please, and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. A formality, we can do the roll call.
Chair Mead.
Here.
Vice Chair Horland.
Here.
Member Newton. Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Right now we'll have public comment. If they haven't turned in any cards yet, please turn cards in. The limit of 2 minutes, please. Are there any cards?
No.
Okay, no cards. Thank you. Okay, for the minutes of the March 17th meeting, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. On to the item 5 on the calendar. We are. Yeah. Okay. Pass that around too. I'm going to turn it over to Travis or Daniel to go over some of the items that have come up before regarding the C&D ordinance. He will kind of briefly instruct us on some of the items that are on there. Travis?
Hey, good morning, everyone. So I'm Travis Barnes with Resource Recycling Systems as a senior consultant, part of the SCS project team. So we've been tasked with trying to develop a model ordinance template for the authority on behalf of the county and the member cities that hopefully they could adopt to then increase C&D recycling throughout the county. So, the authority's goal as defined in the master plan is to increase recycling to try to meet the state's 75% recycling goal. And C&D waste has been one of the material streams that's been identified as having the potential to help move the needle with that. We recognize there's a lot of existing C&D processing occurring within the county and some great facilities that are already doing a wonderful job with that. And so we really welcome everyone's feedback today. We're hoping for this to be a dialogue. So for those that are sitting in the audience, feel free to grab a seat if you'd like to. We would like for this to be something where we're not speaking at you, but really trying to get your input on, concerns that you may have about the current draft, any changes that you think would be necessary, but also to learn a little bit more about your operations and what you see working in potentially other jurisdictions that you work as well. I'd like to go over kind of a little bit of ground rules with this. Knowing that our goal is to increase recycling, which I think everyone would support, we really want this to be something where, again, it's a back and forth dialogue, not so much as a debate. There might be topics that come up that we belabor to the point where we might need to park that idea to move forward just for sake of time to make sure that we keep within the time allotted with it. But that said, we really do want to hear from everyone. So if you feel that you've got something to add to something that someone has already said, we definitely want to welcome that, but also not to belabor the same points over and over again. We definitely want to have mutual respect, open discussion from everyone. Make sure that we're being respectful and getting through with learning from each other. And beyond that, I'll turn it back over to Sam or Chair Mead to go over everything that you'd like to, and then I've got some kind of leading questions to get us started whenever we're ready. I think one clarifying point that has led to some confusion previously: the Solid Waste Authority does not have the ability to adopt an ordinance and enforce it themselves regarding C&D. So it would be something that the county and the individual cities that are members of the ILA would need to adopt, implement, and enforce at the local level. And we understand there's a lot of questions regarding how that would work. So we're really trying to learn today on some of the basics, the framework for an ordinance, and knowing that with any new ordinance, there's always going to be an implementation timeline that would be needed. There's always going to be questions about, exactly where the rubber meets the road with that. And we don't want to get too bogged down in the minutiae of that today to really think about an overall framework that'll work for projects that are generating waste, whether that be new construction, renovations, or demolition, and also looking at potentially, how do we limit the amount of material from construction sites going directly to landfill before it's being processed beneficially to try to recover some of those valuable materials, put it back in the supply chain. I don't know, Chair Mead or Ms. Whirl, if you have anything else to add before I kind of get into
Just
some more questions.
quickly, yes. As Travis said, this is your meeting. This is your opportunity to let us know what possibly can and can't be done. It's not to say that everybody's going to get their way. That's not what we're here for. But it is to say that we're working to get a very viable document that can take care of C&D waste, that can do it effectively, economically, and workably, so that we can take this out of the waste stream and reuse it. So to that extent, we need your opinion. We need your honest opinion. As Travis said, I'm sure there are going to be some of you that are going to have the same comment on the draft ordinance. Please don't overdo it. Mention it. Talk about it. We need to have your objection or your favorability reading of it. But if it's been mentioned 4 or 5 times, we don't need to go down deep into it anymore. It's just not worth it. I do have a sign-up sheet. I want anyone here who wants to talk, who wants to express an opinion, to please sign this so you can be called upon, because this is your meeting. So anybody here that hasn't signed this sheet, please? Nope. Okay.
Is the other one around somewhere?
I put it up on the table already.
Okay, please. And after looking at this, I would remind people, write legibly, please. And I think, Elise, do we have people online? Okay.
We do.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right. Sam, what do you?
I don't know if you want. Do you want to have Travis kind of just talk about the program summary and the draft ordinance at all, or I mean just an overview? I mean, and the draft ordinance is just a framework, just so everyone knows. The draft ordinance is a framework just to get started. It's a starting point for us. So for this group right now, so anything we have, nothing's solidified at all.
Briefly, yeah. I'm sorry.
Do we want to do introductions for everyone first?
Do we need introductions? All right, let's just go around the table. We'll start. Louis, go ahead.
Okay. I want to welcome everybody that's here. We've been, as everybody knows, we've been following this for over 4 years now, and I've distributed packets to everybody.
These are, yeah. This is just kind of an introduction, and we'll talk later.
I'm so
That's
sorry.
all right.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Louis DeVito, I'm Government Affairs Consultant for the Florida Waste Haulers and Recyclers Coalition. I'm also here today representing Albert Panzarella Waste and Recycling, who's a board member of the Florida Waste Haulers and Recyclers Coalition, and he sends his regrets that he cannot be here, but he had a previous commitment that he could not switch.
Okay, thank you.
Dustin Du Bois, I'm the president of JWR Construction Services. I'm here representing, I guess, my company, but also Associated Builders and Contractors. I'm a former board member and chair.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Solid Waste Authority. My name is John Carter, and I serve as Assistant Director of the Associated Builders and Contractors, Florida East Coast.
Good morning. I'm Hugh Montague with Diligent, ABC board member as well.
Good morning. Fred Harmon, representing Waste Management. I'm the area director for C&D recycling operations in Florida.
Yep.
John Casagrande, Coastal Waste and Recycling.
Chad Abel, Coastal Waste and Recycling, Vice President of EHS and Engineering.
Bella Martinez, Government Affairs, Coastal Waste and Recycling.
Okay, thank you very much. And okay.
So again, Travis Barnes with the consultant team. I'm joined by.
Good morning, Daniel Deitch with SES Engineers, the project manager for the Solid Waste and Recyclable Material Master Plan.
Sam A., Interim Executive Director for the Broward Solid Waste Authority, and we also have some individuals online also.
Yes, could we have them introduce themselves, please? And ask whether they would like to speak also.
Philip Medico, Coastal Waste and Recycling, and I'm going to bypass speaking. Thank you. Philip Medico, Coastal Waste and Recycling, and I'll pass on speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip.
Good morning. My name is Shelby Lewis. I am with RRS, so I'm working with Travis Barnes and Daniel.
Okay. Is that all for online? Okay.
That wants to announce themselves.
All right. Thank you. All right. Do you want to say something?
No, I think we just introduce.
Okay. Okay.
So we're going to start out with Travis Barnes with RRS to make a brief presentation.
Right. So we've got 2 draft ordinances that have been provided out to the public thus far, based on the feedback that we've gotten from this committee and other stakeholders. One is intended to ban the direct hauling of construction demolition debris to disposal without first requiring it to go to a C&D processing facility. The thought is that that one might be a more simple approach that would not necessarily put the onus of having a specific recycling rate on projects that are generating waste, but just require them to take it to a permitted facility for processing before it would be disposed. We understand that there would need to be some thresholds and exemptions provided to not make that overly burdensome for smaller projects or for other special circumstances. On that particular ordinance, Broward County has had some recent conversations with us, and they would like to make sure that we are really considering the impact not only on their landfill, but on the smaller mom and pop folks that are doing work, generating some type of bulky waste C&D material, and they would like to see, that threshold to trigger compliance with that ordinance be fairly high. And so we're interested to get some feedback on that. The other ordinance is a more comprehensive ordinance where we have looked at ordinances across the country, also in Florida, developed what we feel is a workable approach here that is a little bit more of an aggressive ordinance that sets requirements for the C&D recycling facilities. It also sets requirements for projects that are generating C&D waste, and also would ban that direct haul material without requiring it to be processed first at a permitted C&D facility. We understand there's a lot of questions regarding what the threshold should be to trigger enforcement with that, and also lots of interest from the municipalities, obviously, in the county as to how that would be implemented and enforced, and with the concern being that we don't want to have a patchwork of different rules that are really cumbersome for everyone, try to make it as uniform as possible across the county as far as it's implemented. But really, I'd like to take a step back from that right now and not get into the specifics of the ordinance, and really hear about, how do you currently operate, and how is the material currently flowing in your system from the construction industry? How are you currently approaching this? Where are things that you think there could be some good ideas to help increase recycling of C&D materials? And we can certainly get into the specifics of the ordinance if we have time down the road, but the thought is to really have some questions getting into kind of how do you currently operate so that we can be better informed to develop the ordinance. So at any time, I guess feel free to, we don't have everyone to stand up their things like the other committees, but I guess raise your hand, state your name again, and we can make sure that we're going around the table to get everyone's feedback as we go.
Yeah, and just to add, this is a very informal process. We're not going to stand on ceremony here, okay? So with that in mind, let's go ahead. We started over there before. Let's start down at the end down there. Mr. Casagrande?
Henry, Chad, go ahead. Why don't you start?
Yeah, good morning. To familiarize yourselves with Coastal Waste and Recycling, I'd just like to talk about our operations and where we started. Coastal started in 2018. Our first facility we purchased was a C&D recycling system with a few roll-off trucks. Since then, in the last 8 years, we've grown to construct brand new 9 C&D recycling MRFs on the East Coast. We have Vero Beach, Palm City, Hobe Sound, West Palm Beach, and Pompano Beach. Within Broward County, we also have a single stream system that was just commissioned taking some volumes and, testing it out and getting it going. So within Broward County, we're supplying about 1,000 tons per day of C&D recycling, varying between 800 and 1,200 on any given day, and about 200 tons of single stream capacity available to the homeowners and commercial businesses within Broward County. Our company really was based on landfill diversion. This has been an organic development of a company on what the customer was asking for. Nothing where we did it was a new regulation. We didn't enter a market because a particular municipality banned C&D from entering whatever disposal they had. It was completely organic company, and I think that's just a talk to the free market and giving people what they're requesting. So just as a real quick, 'cause I actually have a little bit more limited time here, I wouldn't mind making a couple comments on the ordinance, if that's okay.
No, please, that's what we're here for. Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things I find as I check off the list, certifications and fees, these are things that help regulate the industry. We understand that they're out there. It's a little bit duplicative, put additional burden, and any fee that you put on the industry is A, going to be passed on to the consumer, so it's going to increase cost, and B, it's also a barrier to entry. With our footprint within Broward County, barrier to entry isn't, bad for us, right? We're established already, but it does, inhibit a little bit of competition that could be out there to provide more services to the customer, especially when you have criteria that's put on for a particular quantity of recovery, and within this, the 20% excluding alternate daily cover, you're not going to be able to achieve some of these goals without substantial investment in excess of $8 to $10 million. In order to put a system in that is adequately separating these materials, it is a substantial investment. That in and of itself is a barrier to entry to the free market in a sense. Besides the certification and fees, the existing regulatory oversight that exists in Broward County is pretty substantial, beyond a lot of the other counties that are out there. I would say all of the facilities that are operating here on the solid waste side interact frequently with the Broward County Solid Waste District. I also found that reading through the ordinance, these are pretty duplicative again. We already report on a monthly basis to Broward County Solid Waste District our diversion rates, our inbound, outbound volumes, where the materials go. All this information is readily available to monitor the efforts we have from a very rudimentary sorting standpoint on any permitted facility to the sophisticated mechanical sorting that a firm like ours utilizes. The other thing kind of on the regulatory and municipal side is just concerns that I would have with all the individual cities that are out there. Obviously, this is a group of municipalities, unincorporated. Everybody has their own individual municipal contract with varying degrees of specificity to disposal outlets. Some municipalities require industrial, encompass residential, industrial, and commercials. Others are just residential. So when you try to dictate the direction of disposal, how do we incorporate that into municipal contracts that are already existing? What if that increases the fees, the processing costs due to some of the other oversight and licensing and certifications that are involved? And how does that impact the city and its residents and their tax base? Is that going to be a pass-through? How does it affect the vendor supplying the service? We do all the pickup in Pompano, Davie, and Coral Springs currently. So there's a potential impact there, and I think a lot just to be analyzed to see what those impact and where is that cost going to lie in that potential impact. based upon the diversion rates, the concern I have is really more for my customers than myself. As I said, when you put a system such as ours is, handling a large volume, the 20% recovery excluding ADC is very achievable. We do that every day. We're probably in the 30 to 40% range besides ADC, and so not a big deal for us. But the inconsistency I see is, what does the builder do? If they utilize my facility or facilities such as Waste Management's, and we're going to be in that 30% range, how can they even achieve their goal when we have the best available technology to do so? If they attempt to do it on their site, what is the impact of that? If they remove all the metal, they remove all the rock, my recovery rate is going to go down. So we're going to have a potential issue where we might not meet the 20% if they're super efficient. And would they even be able to meet the 50% of their own accord anyway, right? Because I believe in the ordinance, we have basically reporting, as we already do to the solid waste districts, is going to be the numbers that are utilized to hit the 20%. And then, again, we're providing that customer with our segregation process. I would say of note, if you're not super familiar, C&D is much less contaminated than a residential single stream. Residential single stream has organic materials, moisture, et cetera, et cetera. C&D is a lot more easy to separate into constituents. So a little concerned about, we're construction site size. We're often sending grapple trucks in because we can't pull a roll-off box, much less have 5 different roll-off boxes available to the constructor of their facility. So again, I think there's definitive increase in cost to building and continuing the growth of Broward County. That's a major concern of myself. I've seen just in general that organic growth, I think Coastal is a prime example of that, has given an increase to recycling, especially on the C&D business. And I believe that it's going to continue to grow with ourselves having 2 projects in the work and averaging 1 new facility per year over the course of the last 8 years in the various markets that we operate. When you ask to point to some of our neighboring communities, Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County, what differentiates them from us? The availability of a burn plant. They've pushed out C&D as much as possible, and they sent it to us and our neighbor in West Palm Beach, Waste Management. They've done a great job of eliminating it from their burn plant. Doesn't have great BTU value. It has non-combustibles, but they also allow us to return at about a half of the cost of their typical inbound. The light fraction coming off the C&D does have a better BTU value. We've removed all the non-combustibles. So, when we put a facility in play up there, we also have the benefit to return locally, and the option to take it to facilities outside the market as long as it has been recycled. So, and then there's just varying degrees across all the counties on how much they promote and initiate removal of all materials from the landfill disposal and/or the waste to energy plants. So, I guess just to kind of summarize, concerns with cost, seeing duplicative measures of reporting that already exist and could be tweaked within the own regulation that they have, a burden on the citizens, and the continued growth of Broward County. And thank you for letting me go first, because I'm sure I just checked a bunch of things off the list for the rest of our partners here. But thank you again for letting me present, and I'm always available to have further discussions and with anybody at any time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chad. You have any questions for Chad?
No.
Okay. Next, Ms. Martinez.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair. Thank you for the time. I think Chad went through a lot of what a lot of people are wanting to say today. I'll just touch briefly. My colleague John and I came at the last subcommittee meeting to kind of touch base on the duplication that we see in the monthly and annual reporting that we do currently have in place. Without going into too much detail, just to save time, you all did receive a handout that outlines one copy of a report from one of our facilities at Coastal, as well as one from WM. That's just an example of the monthly reports that we currently do submit. And on the front of that attachment, you'll see that it kind of outlines how someone can navigate to that through the website. So if there are questions about how accessible that information is to the general public and to municipalities, you're able to see that there. Not sure what that's ominous. I think for now, I'll just leave it at that. Feel free to review the reporting, and if there's any questions we can answer, we're always available to do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Martinez.
Henry, I just wanted to, if you don't mind, just jumping in. One of the things that Chad was talking about, it was, and it's important to notice that, noted that the definition of we in this new ordinance call it covered C&D material. Well, I think that we need to stick to what's defined in 403. 43706 defines what C&D is. If we start trying to change it for recycling, it goes back to what Chad was talking about. In the what is recycling, what is not recycling, technically or in reality, C&D is still defined as solid waste. Solid waste under many of the franchise contracts are, exclusive. The cities today within Broward County have enough to say grace over, and enforcing haulers contracts is probably not on the top of the list. Their code enforcement has a lot more to do. But again, and Chad, you really touched on it well, that what would this do to revenue, raising the cost? Does it divert revenue? Franchise fees. All the, 20, I believe all 20 municipalities, regardless of who their hauler is, do get franchise fees. And where C&D is inexclusive, C&D is defined as solid waste, they see the franchise fees are there. So caution how we redefine or call covered C&D. What's covered? C&D is defined, and then recovered materials are defined, and then we can at that point not divert and cause confusion with the cities, with haulers, or other haulers coming in as well. It's covered. It's not as we know, recycling isn't franchisable. That's a word. So that's our concern there, is that we look to the definition and stick to what's it the Florida statute. That's C&D. It's not. There's no definition for covered. It's C&D is C&D is solid waste. Yes, we recycle it. Yes, everything else we talked about. But let's not confuse or add something that may cause confusion and then eventually have issues with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Casagrande. Fred, go ahead.
Yes, good morning. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today to discuss the ordinance set before us here. A little bit about WM. Most people are familiar with us, but from a C&D processing standpoint, we just opened our 7th processing facility here in Florida. We do have 2 strategically placed facilities here in Broward County, one on the south end of the county, one on the north end of the county that logistically are a really good footprint for folks delivering material to us. Commenting on the ordinance, really you'll find I'm going to echo a lot of what Chad brought up. 2 of the things that I would mention is the certification. It seems that we're duplicating, or there's some redundancy in doing so, because if you look at how RCI does their certification, I'm definitely not an expert with them. It's just a re-image of what Bella shared with you today, and perhaps it's a different optic, but it's the same material. In terms of recovery rates, our recovery rates are dictated by the material that comes in. And if this ordinance does push, construction and demolition companies to start, or motivates them rather, to start sorting their material on the site, well, in short, we're inbounding a little more than just residue to begin with, and that can impact us. So if we start putting restraints on that, or we put, a certain boundary on diversion, especially exclusive of an alternate daily cover, it can put a stranglehold on us. And while we might have a 30 or 40% diversion rate today, well, that can change pretty quick with our inbound material composition. If you looked at the history of some of these reports that Bella shared, you'll see that those numbers do go up and down, and RCI does have a mechanism for that. I'm not saying they don't, but to that, there's also the expense of it. And while each of us are very well-run companies with good operators, when we have an expense, we all know where that trickles down to, and it has to. As far as, again, the reporting, it is very redundant. The material is outlined really well in the reports. We not only specify what the material is, where it goes. A couple other notes on the ordinance. There was some definition about the covered materials, just considering that sometimes there's not an outlet. You take, for example, I believe shingles were in there. There's not necessarily going to be an outlet for that, and quite frankly, it's because there's not an abundance of asphalt shingles in southern Florida. And then lastly, I would say just echoing the municipal impact. Obviously, the board here or this subcommittee has put together a lot of effort, put together, quite frankly, a good draft, and I'm glad that we're able to have the opportunity to discuss and give input. But at the end of the day, I believe the municipalities will have to approve of this, abide by it, and live with it. And I would just throw out there that's going to probably be a lot more discussion than today. I think we're all pretty much in unison, and we didn't practice this, but we all operate very similar. We have big investments. The last thing I would add, and we think about the future and barrier of entry with using some type of certification. When we don't want to create a barrier of entry, we definitely recommend having good competition locally. But what I would recommend, though, is that we put some type of gate or fence around what it looks like for people to enter. What you don't want is a bunch of folks to get a small parcel of land, and they're going to invest a lot in the land, but you don't have to invest beyond that if you just want to start kicking material around on the ground. And you'll see that happen in some marketplaces. You know, you need investments of some type of measuring mechanism, a scale, and then like coastal, we've put large capital investments into these plants. We have pretty large maintenance budgets each year to keep them maintained, and we want to avoid just every individual that could go out and buy a small parcel of property or rent a piece and start kicking material around on the ground. It's not good for the environment. It's not good for the industry.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I think, as a matter of fact, you mentioned specifically asphalt shingles. I believe those have been taken out of the.
Right. Yeah. On the list of covered materials, we would like your feedback. Are there others that should be eliminated? Asphalt shingles was one that was eliminated from previous feedback. It does still have roofing tiles included within there, but I can read through the list real quickly. So current draft has asphalt, brick, cardboard, cinder blocks, clean concrete, clean wood, and untreated lumber, both ferrous and non-ferrous metals, and then the roofing materials that are tiles, rigid plastics, and wooden pallets. So on those materials specifically, are those that you would advocate to eliminate?
Just a general comment. I think there's variability in the markets to get them out. And some of them, if you look at rigid plastics as an example, the market goes up and down with that particular material. The rigid plastics is the most contaminated item. And it's your buckets and lids. So what are we doing with that? We're mixing grout, doing a lot of work like that. So the rigids become too contaminated to recycle. And, you know, sometimes it could outweigh the transportation itself to get it to the market. And the only other comment I would defer a little bit more to our construction folks here. But asphalt, removal of asphalt requires to be very, very clean to go to, repurpose at an asphalt plant. I know we don't see a lot of it come through our facilities, but I know that the level of contamination is extremely low to redo that. So, and again, more of a road construction when you're going to get it out of the material. So.
Similarly so, I mean, there's a law of diminishing returns when it comes to harvesting these materials. And at the end of the day, the marketplace does dictate that. Plastics is a good example. We're probably at the bottom of the trough from a pricing standpoint. And while we might have predictors on when that's going to rise back up, nobody really knows. We don't have the crystal ball. And I just share a concern about, constraining that these materials must be recycled. Because again, if the law of diminishing returns say that we're paying significantly more to harvest the material than the end market value, it goes back to like the cost of certification, cost of maintenance.
Okay, thank you very much, Fred. Mr. Carter? I'm sorry, I passed over you? What was your name?
Thank you. My name is Hugh Montague. With Diligent Concrete Washout, we collect concrete on job sites. So our material we collect from the ready mix trucks wash out in our sealed containers. So we have pans that go under the concrete pumps. And so part of that helps the contractors follow their stormwater pollution prevention plan. We work with home builders, general contractors, and concrete contractors. So all clean concrete material is what we help collect and set, and it's separated right out of the gate from either the pump or the ready mix trucks.
So one thing I'll say on behalf of the industry is we do support a mandatory C&D recycling that is required by state. It extends the life of the landfill. It's the right thing to do. But as we've read both draft ordinances and reviewed them with our membership, we can't currently support them as they stand. The problem is not the goal. It's the mechanism to get there. We hope that we can work today towards a simpler path, one that doesn't require new administrative burdens on contractors, municipalities, and the county. I'd like to point out that Broward County in 2024 hit a 48% recycling goal. We are very close to where we are, where we'd like to be without, all these undue regulatory burdens that will drive up costs directly to the consumers. Also, if for some of these compliance issues, if we are to take it to a third-party facility and they close down mid-job, who bears that burden? So there's just a lot of questions that we hope that we can address, and I'm going to defer a lot to Hugh and Dustin to talk about more specifics. And so, Dustin, if you want to.
It's a little strange to be up here. Used to being back there.
Don't be afraid.
As the GC in the room, I'm not going to hit on all the stuff they hit. I think it's extremely duplicative to have to go through all this. But as a GC, administratively, it's going to require almost an additional person on the job site just to track trash, right? Let alone trying to separate it, right? Every job is not the same, right? But most of our jobs here in South Florida, we don't have room to lay stuff out and separate it at the job site. That's, unless you've got a big site demo, where you're taking down kind of a neighborhood and whatnot, you don't have it, right? And frankly, those projects, the contractors, the demo guys, they're already separating the steel and the concrete, right? They're gonna crush the concrete. We'll utilize it on the site, or it'll go somewhere else, right? So I don't think it ever makes it to you guys, and I don't know how that gets tracked at the county level, if it does at all. But it's certainly getting recycled and utilized. The other, really, I guess my biggest kind of pushback on this whole thing is who's going to be responsible for tracking this information? Is it going to be somebody at the county? Is it going to be somebody at the building department? And who's going to be, I guess, enforcing it, right? And determining which job is required to separate or divert what material. Definitely not opposed to it, right? I think you guys know me. I think I'm a big fan of diverting and utilizing resources that we've got. But I think administratively, this is a much bigger burden to reach the same endpoint of data of material that's been recovered, right? You get these reports every month from every MRF, right? Every facility. If you're getting it already, now you're going to have people tracking it 2 or 3 separate times. So there's a lot of cost and a lot of burden included with that. So I think if you're going to do anything, from my perspective, it would just be, require that C&D is processed to the fullest extent, right, before it goes to the landfill or WTE. Is that it? I get it? sorry, one more thing. Just I saw there's in there's I guess penalties, right, or fines associated with not hitting your goals right before you can get your CO. Again, it's like one more thing at the end of the job when you're trying to get a CO is trying to figure out where your trash went. But frankly, if my clients had the option of paying a $5,000 fee to not have to do this, they would do it in a heartbeat, right? And then all of the intent behind this goes away.
Okay, Mr. DeVita, go ahead.
The last point that Dustin brought up about paying the diversion fee was brought up at the last executive committee meeting, and it's definitely something that should be stricken. I have a prepared statement, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to just try to go around the points that I want to make. So first of all, I did distribute a packet to everybody at the table. There's about 12 pages there, and it's a lot of informative information and a lot of information that'll clear up some questions that have been raised. I think one of the problems we've had in this process is that we have not had enough attendance or enough attention paid to what is actually going on. People come in at the last minute, they get little bits and pieces, and they don't understand how we've progressed and the things we've tried to do. So I'm going to request that the packet that I distributed to everybody today, I will send electronically to Alicia, and then have her to send out to all the municipalities and all other interested parties, because I think everybody should really see this information, okay? So having said that, if you'll turn to I think it's page 9 and 10 of the stuff, of the packet that I sent, you look at Florida statutes, and I think this is a good place for us to start, because there's been a lot of questions about what the law is and how to enforce it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And basically, Florida statute says that the county has to provide for solid waste disposal and management. It's as simple as that. And 403 is very complicated because there's different sections where different things are stated and then redefined and then stated again. But on that same page that says the 2025 Florida statutes, if you go down to the last paragraph, which is paragraph B, it says, in order to assist counties in attaining the goals set forth in paragraph A, the legislature finds that the recycling of construction and demolition debris fulfills an important state interest. Therefore, each county must implement a program for recycling construction and demolition debris. So, once again, and I've said this repeatedly, I'm not an attorney, but I work with the law and statutes all the time. The way I read this is the county is currently not in compliance with Florida state statute. Okay? Let's go to the next page, which talks about municipal enforcement. And this has been something that Matt Haber has brought up over and over again, and the county has brought up over and over again. How do we enforce this? The municipalities are all concerned about having to pass additional ordinances, et cetera. And it says, according to the Broward County Charter, county ordinances apply countywide unless they conflict with a municipal ordinance, in which case the county ordinance is not effective within the municipality to the extent of the conflict. To the best of my knowledge, and I defy anybody to show me I'm wrong, there is no municipality in Broward County that says do not recycle C&D. So that should eliminate that problem. And it just basically says the municipality has to enforce the county ordinance. So now that we've got that out of the way, if you'll turn to the last page, I had submitted at one time a draft ordinance which did not go very far, and I've changed my position on that. Hang on, I can't get this page stuck together. Okay, finally got it. So what I compiled is just suggested language that I think should be turned over to the county attorneys for drafting. Let me stop for just a second. As I just said, Based on the state statute, based on the municipal compliance, I think it's time we just move this thing along. I think the subcommittee should to ask the executive committee to just say to the county, it's time, guys, let's put this behind us and let's just move onward. And the suggested language just says that because of the Florida state statutes, this needs to be done. The ordinance drafts that we've been looking at are trying to decipher, should we have asphalt, should we have this, should we have that? We have a administrative code that the state has put together which defines construction and demolition debris. In all my years, I've been involved in operations, I've been involved on the job sites. This is material that you can find in a construction box, okay? So why are we going to reinvent the wheel? Let's just go with what's already part of the Florida code. You'll know right underneath that, because one of the questions that's been raised, the CCA treated wood. I was involved in the banning of CCA treated wood in the state years ago. And it just simply, it follows state statute. It gets disposed of at a lined landfill. And then lastly, a one-page compliance form, which just defines the site that the material went to and ticket numbers to ensure that it went to the proper facility. Now, since I put that together, there have been some questions raised to me because I am in contact with other people that have interest in this issue. And we want to keep administration down to an absolute minimum. The counties do not need any more, the municipalities do not need any more work than what they currently have. So any work that we ask them to do is automatically going to hit resistance from the municipalities. The contractors do not want any more work because any more work we put on them, they're going to resist, okay? So what is the easiest and simplest way to do this? Well, let's go back to the basic. If we ban unprocessed C&D from going into the landfill, that really hits the nail right square on the head. When an unprocessed load pulls up, and it's only going to happen for a couple of months until people get the message that we're not taking any unprocessed material at the landfill, they're going to say, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, here's a list of 10 FDEP permitted processors operating in the county, and you have your pick, go to any one of them. And eventually, the water will seek its own level, and it'll stop. A lot of the other regulation and stuff has to be dispensed with. And now I'm going to get a little bit specific. Contractor C&D diversion rate sheets has to go. C&D material management plan has to go. Third-party facility certification has to go. Exemptions for covered projects, there should be none. All projects should be covered. All C&D should be processed. Non-compliance fees have to go. Covered project valuation, thresholds, and disposal enforcement has to go. From the numbers we see, 900,000 tons of C&D is escaping the system. To put that in perspective that everybody at this table can understand, because 900,000 tons is a big number, but what is 900,000 tons? That's 300,000 20-yard roll-off containers. That's what that equates to, okay? Are we going to recycle all of that? No, we're not going to recycle all of it, but we're going to put a big dent in it. So how do we do that? Let's get that material to the processors and then go to the landfills. Now, one of the things that has been kind of talked on the quiet side is potential revenue that's not going to make it to the landfills. So let's put that into perspective. Currently, and all the people at this table can tell you, they have to truck their residual a distance to get rid of it. If the landfills are looking for more material, because it is an economic factor, why don't they compete for the residual? There's a lot of money being spent on trucking, so there should be some leverage and leeway. It's just a suggestion. I'm not saying that it has to be done. I'm not even saying it should be in the ordinance, but it's something that I think could be considered. So on that note, I'm going to stop for the time being. Let's just make it simple. Stop the material from going to the landfill, mandate that all C&D gets recycled, and let's do it simple. No additional paperwork, no additional monies, and be done with it. Thank you.
I'd like to respond to that if I can a little bit. So, Mr. DeVita, with what you had just proposed, a lot of that is more stringent than what's in our current ordinance. So the definition in the state statutes includes a broader list of materials than what we're targeting in our draft.
Yeah, in
ordinance.
other words, we're not saying that you have to do those materials. It's saying that's what the material is defined. When you're on a C&D site, you might get a load that's a lot of cardboard and cement bags and some rock. Okay, you might get another load that's got a lot of PVC pipe in it. You might get, the loads are mixed. So why are we going to define what the materials are? Okay, the materials can be anything that you could find on a construction site. On a construction site, they might find that they had to pull out a bush someplace, so they took that bush and they threw that in the C&D box. So there's no. If you want to define C&D, we have a administrative code that defines it, and it talks rocks, soils, dirt, wood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's just go with that. Why do we have to pick out and say, well, this material should be, or this material shouldn't be? This material could be this. Let's just go with what we've got.
Yeah, so the intent in the draft ordinance that we got was to be not as stringent as what the definition is in there. The other thing you brought up was no exceptions whatsoever. And so we've got some exceptions based on the size of the project.
No exceptions.
Right.
No exceptions.
So that would be a higher level of burden on
No, it's not.
construction projects.
No, it's not. Because all they're going to do is they're going to take their material, whether they self-haul or they hire a hauler to move the material, and it's going to go to a processor. They're not going to have any responsibility to deal with the material on a job site. They're going to load it in their own trucks, their own containers, the roll-off company that they hire, and then it's the responsibility of that person to take that material to the C&D processor, because frankly, they can't take it anyplace else because the landfill's not going to take it.
Right. So the enforcement would be at the landfill to determine the loads coming in, had they, already been processed somewhere, so they can verify that that was done. So there'd still be that
because basically the landfill is only going to be able to take a load, theoretically, if it came from coastal, if it came from waste management is bringing the loads to their own landfill, obviously, or any other licensed MRF.
Right. The other thing was what happens if they do not comply with the ordinance? What you had proposed previously was that they don't get their certificate of occupancy. And so we had less stringent that there is a penalty way in case they didn't want to do it for whatever reason, there was an out, so that they didn't have to necessarily be penalized to not get their certificate of occupancy. So that's something else. I feel like yours is more stringent, even though it's stating to be more simple. In some ways, it's more stringent on the contractors.
I'm sorry, I don't follow that.
So if they don't take material properly, you're saying there's no exceptions. Everyone has to do it. You don't get your certificate of occupancy unless you do
why would they not comply?
Well, what I'm saying is that ours is less stringent, that there is an out and that they could pay that non-compliance fee if for whatever reason they couldn't comply with the ordinance. So again, I think ours is less stringent than what you proposed in many ways.
Once again, okay, I have a tendency to simplify things, and to me it's very simple. I'm going to build something. When I get done with the scraps of what I just built, I have to get rid of it. The only place I can get rid of it is at a MRF, a licensed MRF in Broward County. I don't have any choice of saying, well, I'm not going to take it here, I'm going to take it. No, this is where it has to go. So why do we have to have any of that language in there whatsoever? Okay? Any C&D material, no ifs, ands, or buts. Doesn't matter if it's a 1,000 square foot project or a 1 million square foot project, has to go to a processor to be processed. Now, it can go either in your pickup truck, it can go in your wheelbarrow, it can go in a roll-off truck. It doesn't matter how it gets there, it's got to go to the processor, and then at that point, whatever's left over goes to the landfill.
Are there any members of the contracting industry here that might want to comment on that?
And also, I think we want to talk to to the landfills, just to get their input also, because what you're saying is that the landfills that are out there, that there would be zero that would go to them.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because when Waste Management went for their expansion, Mr. Langstrom, who's sitting in the audience, talked about how much Waste Management recycles, okay? And there was discussion about recycling the material. And if you note that I believe it's January 27th, Monarch Hill will no longer take any organics. It will only take C&D and bulk material. So there's no reason why they should object to taking only processed material, considering they're probably one of the biggest processors in Broward County.
There's one more landfill that I'm aware of also that I believe is a county landfill, so we'd like to hear.
Well, the county landfill is, it's a very unfortunate thing because they currently don't have any processing. But as I said earlier in another statement, it would be a perfect opportunity for the Broward County landfill to contact the processors and offer to take the residual waste, which will save those trips up to the central part, northern part of the state of Florida. Because the trucking, and especially, and it's what a perfect time to talk about it with the fuel prices going through the moon right now.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, you know.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's something that should definitely be looked at. I don't think that anything should stand in the way. Once again, the state says you should do it, so the county, as far as I'm concerned, is not in compliance right now, okay? And you have the reason why, you have the language why, let's just do it and get it done. All the other pieces will fall where they may. And guess what? If the county doesn't make a deal to get residual, shame on them.
Yeah, I want to hear from some of the contractors.
And also the landfill people as well.
So, speaking in reference for the ABC and contractors, I think this is definitely more burdensome on the GCs that they can't. I mean, I think definitely the burden shouldn't fall on the GC because they don't have control. They're hiring somebody that should have control. And also we're talking about affordability. I think that's a huge concern for everybody in construction and housing. And the more regulations, the more cost that we are passed down, it just makes things more burdensome on the GCs and the home builders, and that's going to take away, that's just raising costs for people to be able to buy a home or to build a project.
I think Mr. DeVita's point is that they have to be, the debris has to be hauled somewhere. Why not haul it to a C&D processing facility rather than to a landfill?
I think it's more on the reporting side. That's.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the administrative side of it, right? Again, okay. It's an extra step from what I can see, right, to receive the reporting that you're already getting, right? And now you're creating a situation where my CO can be held up, or my final, right, on a project that, I mean, you talked about barrier to entry, you know what I mean? Luckily, my projects are large enough to where I can tell the owner, you got to pay for this, right? But small contractors, they're not going to be able to do it, right? And the owner's going to tell them to pack sand. They're not paying it. So I think administrative is a big one. I don't know if Florida Building Code has anything to say about, holding up a CO for something like this. I think that's worth looking into. But I think somebody should reach out to the building officials and talk to them, get their input on it, what they think. My hunch would be that they don't need another thing to track on it. But yeah, from the contractor side, I just think it's extra for no real benefit ultimately at the end of the day. The material's going to go where it's going to go. And I agree, absolutely. It's got to go to a MRF, right? But if that's the rule, that's the rule. That should accomplish, I think, the goal, right, at the end of the day.
I'd just like to reiterate the separation is definitely overburdensome on the contractors. That should be something that's done at the processing facility, so it should be all or nothing. And then tying the certificate of occupancy to diversion compliance gives the county enormous leverage over our contractors for a metric that depends entirely on third-party facility performance. So that's something we simply can't support.
there is one other thing that we should consider, and that is C&D in its form is not compactable. So when we process it at the MRF, it takes out the big bulky components, and what is left, the tonnage is going to be there, and that tonnage is going to go to the landfill. But if you take unprocessed material to the landfill, it's not going to compact, and it takes more airspace than if it has been processed prior. So that's an important consideration.
Did you have any?
Yeah, if I could. So the current ordinance, as it's written, the draft, does allow commingling of materials on site. So it does not require a project to source separate. It enables them to do so, but it doesn't require that. And so it would require commingled materials to go to a permitted C&D facility to be processed. And the way it's envisioned right now would be that project would get the recycling rate that is the recycling rate that facility has. And so the thought would be that you could shop around to determine which facility you wanted to go to. Obviously, you're going to look at haul distance and their tipping fees, but you could also shop around for a higher recycling rate should you want to do so. I think I heard from others, though, that the 50% threshold that's currently in there, or the goal rather, to recycle 50% material from a covered project is overly burdensome. I'm hearing that as well. And I want to kind of get to that number because we've been advocating to have that number much higher previously, and we've got it at 50, but I want to see if that's something where you'll have any feedback on that number.
It's all going to depend on the project.
Right.
I mean, a renovation project versus a new construction, right? The waste product is very different. You know, the size of the project is going to determine that. You know, what I mean, if I'm knocking a building down, I'm going to have a really high recycling rate because it's all concrete and steel, right? At the end of the day. But if I've got a renovation, so for example, we do a lot of affordable multifamily, right? If I'm doing a rehab of those facilities, most of my trash is drywall, right? And I as far as I know, that's not a recoverable material, right? Certainly not, you know.
And it wouldn't be targeted under the ordinance. So drywall wouldn't count. You wouldn't have to track that per se. So only
if you're requiring that I recycle 50% of the waste on the project,
of the targeted
90% of my waste is drywall that's not a recoverable material, well, now I'm screwed.
Right, but the ordinance is written 50% of the materials that are targeted, which is that subset that we talked about earlier. Not everything that's generated on site, only those materials that are targeted for recycling.
But to be fair, that sounds really confusing then, right? If I'm trying to track a percentage of the material that, you know, a percentage of my trash is supposed to be, I don't know. That sounds even more difficult to track, to be frank with you, right? And to get that reporting at the end of the day, who's gonna determine that, right? So because I commingle everything in the dumpster, now it's gonna go to the hauler, to a MRF, and somebody's supposed to look in that pile and separate it and tell me, well, about 50% of that pile is recoverable. Let's make sure we recover 50% of that 50%. I don't know. Maybe I'm making it more confusing than it is, but it sounds difficult to me.
I think one thing to add too is, like one of you had mentioned too, that demolition contractor is going to get that low-hanging fruit there also. So that's going to be pulled out of it, and you've got to really take that into account because they will take that out.
On a heavy demolition.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's a point where it doesn't make sense, right, to bring in a crusher or try to separate that stuff. Right?
But the metal they're going to usually try to.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest once and for all, we dispense with I'm going to suggest once and for all, we dispense with the language that's been presented. We go the tack that I've been trying to stress since the beginning, and we follow state statute, mandate that C&D be recycled, mandate that one of the existing MRFs, or if there should be a future MRF, which I highly doubt, considering there's no land available, the costs, et cetera. But if it should happen, it happens, and they would have every right to get material as well. And that all the material goes to a processor before it gets landfilled. Simple, cut and dry. We follow the state statute. We follow the administrative code for the materials. It eliminates everything that the contractors are concerned about. It eliminates all the things that the municipalities are concerned about. It does not put any more cost or administrative burden on anybody. Let me ask a question. Ralph, let me ask you a question. I know I'm going to put you on the spot.
He likes being on the spot.
If an ordinance was to pass that I suggested, okay, that all C&D must go to a MRF before it gets processed, but it doesn't require you or your people to do any more work or cost you any more money, can you support an ordinance like that?
Okay, so I am not speaking on behalf of the city because that is a decision that's made by the dais and not me, staff. I would provide a recommendation. I do acknowledge that most, or not let's say most, for Miramar, we are part of the Broward County Solid Waste ILA support services for disposal. We utilize the facilities that are there for C&D, which is a which we bring to a MRF. So we are already in compliance with that. I think a lot of municipalities are. I'd find it hard to believe that there are many municipalities that do not use this system currently. So it does seem like there's a little bit of duplicate work going on, but we would support banning, I would recommend to support banning direct hauling to a landfill. Did that answer the question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring something up as well. We've done studies on the benefits, because it's not just taking for the environment, it's also on hauling. So like for concrete's heaviest item on the job. And so we're the most efficient at hauling that and recycling that material. And also we're not trucking it far. So there's like different studies that we've had done by the University of Florida and others on the benefits of the concrete washout and concrete recycling that we do. But also a question I just thought, wanted to bring up is if we're on the job and we're taking the material, the concrete material is going into our washout containers, and then it's coastal or waste management has a container next to us and they're taking C&D. So it's like combining those two and tracking that. It's like, how would that be done? And that's another burden.
Okay, thank you. Richard, you had a question. It's still applicable? Come on up to the mic, Richard.
Good morning. I just wanted to make a comment that folks in the audience here, the acoustics really not that good. I mean, there's a lot of good information coming out from this committee here, and I don't know if there's anything that can be done to improve the acoustics, but I'm trying to take notes with what Louis is saying and others. It's very difficult for us to listen back here, and we're making an effort to come out here to these meetings, and I would appreciate it if something can be done to help us hear a little bit better back here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments around the table?
And one additional comment that I had in regard to C&D processing, and it was a question I had within the ordinance. The ordinance said any landfill, so I was just wondering if a transfer station were to take C&D out of market to a different landfill, would that be covered under this ordinance as not processed, or how is that looked at?
So you're saying if there are a covered project is generating waste, they take it to a transfer station and that's transferred out of the county without being processed?
That's what I was wondering, which is, I guess, we are putting the burden on the generator primarily in this ordinance, and then we're putting requirements on the facilities that they go to. But the ordinance says any landfill or, will not be delivered to any landfill unprocessed, something of that nature. So I was just wondering, we have existing, and Coastal has an existing transfer station in Davie, where we collect, it's class 3, and I don't want to get into a whole conversation about a comprehensive solid waste management plan.
Right.
But I think Broward needs to be cognizant that the ultimate goal as well is to conserve our airspace, conserve our capacity for the continued growth that we see. So, any material that happens to leave Broward County, I think is favorable to Broward County's network. Class 3 material is restricted obviously, from C&D. Both of our facilities in the county are Class 3 transfer station, as well as our recycling center. So we are putting bulk material through and trying to recover what is there, which does adversely affect our recovery. But we're happy to try to get as much out of the material as possible. But as it pertains to a transfer station, if we're going to accept C&D there, I just wanted to make sure that we'd still be permitted to take it to a landfill, and that this is only addressing landfills within Broward County.
Yeah, that would be something we would need the county to weigh in on more so. I would support your view that if it's leaving the county, it's preserving Broward County's airspace, and that's beneficial to the system and the longevity of the landfills that are here. But there is the revenue tipping fee component that they would potentially lose if it's leaving the system, and that would be something that the county would have to weigh in on. The county's here, so I don't want to speak for them. Given the direct haul ban that was proposed, we do have, again, two versions of the ordinance. One is much more simple, moving towards the direction that Mr. DeVita has proposed. It's been brought to our attention in preliminary discussions with the county. They've got concerns that that would severely impact the revenue that they are generating, and they'd like to see more exemptions to be allowed to really set the bar to only the really large projects would be the ones impacted and have to comply with some type of ordinance. So that's something that, is a recent discussion we've had with them, and I'd welcome thoughts on, should there be a higher threshold? Mr. DeVita says all projects. As an environmentalist, I support that, but from a building industry, should it be something where maybe the threshold that triggers ordinance compliance is considerably higher, and so only the larger projects would potentially have to comply with the ordinance?
So we did flag that as well, that the real gap in the ordinance is if approved facility outside of Broward County doesn't qualify. Municipalities, municipal waste contract routes to an out-of-county transfer station or landfill. Does the landfill ban apply at the transfer station gate? And in my previous profession, I served as chief of staff to the mayor of Palm Beach County, who was also the chair of the Solid Waste Authority. So in Palm Beach County, we love our trash, and we want all of it to stay in our system. And it comes down to those tipping fees and the revenue that we generate. So that's a fun philosophical question that Broward County has to answer. Do you guys want to make money off this, or do you want to conserve your capacity at the landfill and ultimately just have a better, cleaner product going to it? And setting a 50% per project rate when we know that projects and the recyclable material on those projects varies, that's a tricky number. There has to be like a margin of error, and it can't be 50%. It could be a goal, but to have a direct compliance rate, there needs to be some type of margin of error, because even your own numbers without this, Broward County had a recycled rate for C&D material of 39% in 2023 and 48% in 2024. So that's an 11-point swing within 1 year. So what changed within that 1 year? That we can now say 50% is our goal. If you don't meet it, here's your fines, no CO. When, I don't know if studies have been done, because the year prior you were at 42%. So, that's one thing we'd like to see.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments?
I've got a question, I guess. This ordinance, is the intent for this to be, I guess, made to happen outside of the master plan? Is it supposed to be adopted as part of the master plan all in one? How does this thing move forward one way or the other?
Yeah, it's separate from the master plan. So it's not dependent upon the master plan. It's dependent on whether the county and the municipalities would want to adopt an ordinance. Okay. The authority does not have the ability to adopt an ordinance themselves. The thought was that this is something that's a worthwhile effort that should be pursued regardless of what happens with the master plan adoption.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, for me, again, I would just stress that, to reduce the amount of reporting that's required up front. As a GC, I manage specialty contractors, right? And I don't get in their business, and I look, frankly, at the waste as just another specialty contractor. Let them figure out what to do with the trash and manage it the best way. Don't put that on me to try and regulate and tell them what to do with their trash or manage it. It's just.
So, question on that: with your current projects that you've got, I'm assuming you shop around or maybe use a similar contractor all the time for your projects. What type of documentation do you currently require to verify what they did with the waste? Are you receiving, disposal tickets to make sure that they're charging you correctly? Like, what do you currently do?
Yeah, I mean, we get billing on a monthly basis, right? We don't get It's been a long time since I've had to deal with it at that level, to be honest with you. But I mean, I think we get a flat rate plus tonnage. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's correct.
But I don't get a report on, you know, the makeup of that waste.
Yeah,
I'm sure
that's
I could
really
if I wanted
yeah,
to,
it's usually
but
requested
you're not,
on a.
But you're not going to get it per project.
Correct.
You know what I mean? That's the reality. Report for a king. It's just not going to happen. So
we track the concrete if you can hear, we track the concrete that's recycled, so we know exactly how many tons we haul from every job site.
Right, but
you're just
that's what you do,
produce the
right?
reports.
So,
Just concrete, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we understand that there's additional reporting, right, in that right now there's no requirement of projects to recycle C&D material. Absent the state statute, if you're doing a demolition or construction project, unless there's a particular jurisdiction, within Broward County, there's not a requirement. So no one's watching to see what you're doing or requiring you to do it. And of the facilities, you have to report to make sure that you're in compliance with your permit for DEP and the county. But again, there's no requirement that you hit a minimum recycling rate, right? So the idea is, how do you move towards putting some type of verifiable recycling rate in place? And that with that, there comes some level of additional reporting that would be required. I think the county's existing framework could be modified to just enhance that slightly, but I don't see it as being overly burdensome. If you were to start source separating all of your material from a job site by your choice, to put metal in one container, concrete in another, then obviously that's going to different locations. There's a little bit more tracking of where the material goes. But from my understanding, you guys are already, you know, you're paying for that disposal. You're checking those receipts to make sure they did the right thing with the material and that there's a charge and there's a disposal associated with it. So I don't see it as being that much overly burdensome compared to what you guys are already doing. I do think on the general contractor side, the form that we've got is not all that different than what Mr. DeVita has described in terms of what would be required. You know, lay out a plan. How much waste do you think would be generated? What types of materials do you think would be coming from the project? Where do you intend to take it? And then just provide your weight tickets as to where you took that material at the end. So I'm curious to know where's that overly burdensome? And then the 50% rate, I mean, I agree if we're hearing from you that that's, you know, too complicated or too stringent. I mean, that's a policy decision as to where they want to set that rate at. But on the reporting, can we get into a little more specifics on that?
Just one thing on that real quick, and I'll let the GCs talk about this. But so we go into a project and we have an estimator, right, that like takes a look, and we get a screenshot view of what we think everything's going to be. So then we have to submit that for your permitting of what we're getting into, and then we get in there, start doing demo. You learn that, you know, this is more than we bid off, or that there's all these unexpected variables, and now it's like that's all tied to us before you'll even give us something. So then we say, like, this is what we're expecting, this is what we have, and now we're tied to those numbers without even like seeing what else is going to come down the pipeline in the job site. I mean, it just varies so much.
So look, I mean, administratively, it's an extra form. It's an extra thing to track. Trust me, I track plenty of crap throughout the day on a project, right? But now someone's going to have to sit there and watch the trash can all day and log what's going into it, right? Because the second something gets covered up, I don't know what's underneath it, right? For me, I don't understand to what end, right? What are you trying to accomplish with me doing this reporting? Is it to extend the landfill life? Is it to meet our 75% recycling goal? And I think from either side of that, that's accomplished by the reporting that these guys are doing already, right? And forget the burden, right? You're adding cost and extra work and ending up in the same place that you're going to be at, right? And you're creating an opportunity to penalize the project, the owner, the contractor, somewhere in the line for something that's largely out of their control, right? I mean, if I've got a project, I got to demolish what I got to demolish. The makeup of that waste is going to be what it is. And it's all going to end up at the MRF, right? At a transfer station. It's all going to end up there regardless of what's in there, right? So I have no control over that. I don't have a control of what was built in a building in the past, what part of that I'm demolishing is recyclable and what's not. Right, you're going to get that reporting regardless, and I think that the place where you're going to accomplish your goals is at the MRF, right? Requiring them or encouraging them to recycle everything that they can. Frankly, I think that's the market kind of dictates what they're going to do at that point too, right? You can't force somebody to accept a material and recycle it if it's not a recyclable material or there's no market for it.
Let me interrupt just a second. There's a blue Toyota out front with the trunk open. It says Solid Waste Authority on the side. Anybody have a blue Toyota? Yeah, it says it's a blue Toyota out front. The trunk is opened on the car. Just if. So yeah, it says Solid Waste Authority on the side.
Well, that can only be like one person's car, I think. So. It's not yours.
No, it's not Sam. Sam doesn't have a blue Toyota. All right.
Real quick, even on the residential side, whether you have a single stream system or a dual stream system, there's still an additional sort at the processing facility. So by having us have to sort every single material and track that on the job site, when there's still going to be a margin of error that has to be addressed at the processing, I think it makes more sense for them to do it because they're doing it anyways.
Yeah, so we're not here to make decisions today, but I think what I'm hearing is that the onus should be on just making sure that material is hauled directly to a processing facility without any requirements on the project or the general contractors themselves, except for to make sure they take it to the appropriate permit facility. Sound right? Okay. So that would be the more recent version of the ordinance that we've got as kind of a starting place. Yeah.
So on the concrete, like what would your vision be for that? Because that goes either to a lake or a concrete crusher, so it's not going to a MRF necessarily.
Yeah, so that would count. So if you're a project, you're generating a lot of concrete, you track that separately with the weight tickets you already do, you would just submit that weight ticket along with whatever they sent, commingled or source separated for the other materials.
When you say weight ticket, what do you mean by that? Because they're not weighing the material when we go to a crusher.
Oh, really? So there's no weight requirement when you drop off your concrete right now?
Because that's the thing, like in Miami, you have virgin aggregate being mined, right? So that material is not as valuable as south as you go north, right? So that material goes into like either filling in a lake that's approved, so they'll fill that in the lake. Some of it's crushed in certain areas. So that's a heavy part of that weight. I mean, that's many tons of the waste stream that's being taken out. And then also, you don't necessarily have the GC that's responsible for taking that. It's the concrete contractor. So he's not the GC. It's not the GC. So the concrete contractor is the one that's saying, okay, the GC says to the concrete contractor, you're taking care of the concrete washout because you're buying the concrete. You take care of, you minimize your concrete waste, basically is what they're trying to do. So with that, that's the shell contractor that's responsible for that, not the GC. So then you have, is there any other times where the GC has another sub handling their waste other than that? But I know, for instance, with the shell contractors, they're taking care of the concrete washout and hauling off that material.
I'm curious. So when you take concrete to a lake to backfill it, is there any documentation required at all?
No.
I mean, maybe that's something.
So we track that, right. And also we've had University of Florida. There's a study on our website on the benefits of recycling and how we track it, and then also we have some other studies based on the fuel and other environmental benefits of utilizing the concrete washout system that we have. But
maybe that's something to track, right? At your level, or when somebody's backfilling, how do you think DEP or somebody's to know what's going back into the ground?
It's 27,000 pounds of concrete, 13.5 tons. So when that container is full, the concrete contract or the shell contractor or the GC calls us and says it's ready to get picked up. So that's 13.5 tons is being hauled away. We take a picture of that. You could verify from every time we pick up, so you see that it's a full container. The GC knows it's a full container because they want to get the maximum amount of concrete hauled away each pull. So that's something. I mean, there's nothing, but it's not weighed, because when you go to the lake at 595 or you go to a concrete crusher, they're crushing. They're not weighing that material as we pull in.
and often when I've got a big project and I'm crushing concrete, I'm utilizing that on site, whether it's a crane road, right, or for road rock. It's a valuable material, right? And right now, I mean, you'll never do that. Maybe you put something in there asking us to document that and give it to you. You know, but creating a system where that reporting, you know, carries fines with it and whatnot. Just
How often does that happen, Dustin?
for me, on probably 50% of my jobs on new construction, right? Because look, in Broward County, we're on an island, right? There's not a whole lot of virgin land that we're building on, right? If I gotta build a new, apartment building, I'm taking something out, right? And frankly, most of the time, as long as there's enough there for the demo contractor to bring in a crusher, they're gonna crush it on site, and I'll utilize that. But also sometimes I'm bringing in crushed concrete. I just building a compost facility, and it's completely utilizing crushed concrete instead of gravel. So, but yeah, most of my projects we're utilizing crushed concrete on.
Do you think that's fairly typical number for most contractors?
It could be.
It's hard to say. I understand, but just...
No, I would say that's probably an average. I mean, look, if you drive by Festival Flea Market right now, boy, there's a lot of crushed concrete sitting out there and steel, and I guarantee you they're going to utilize a lot of that on the site for whatever they're putting up.
But that would be, I think, hauled by, like, let's say we would haul that concrete material to, one of Coastal's facilities or Waste Management, or to Eakins in Palm Beach, and they crush that material, and then it's sold and reused as either paver sand, road rock, things like that, or other uses.
But that material should be tracked, right? Because that right now is not going into our calculations of our recycling goals, right? And so we're missing out on that. So there is that value to it.
Sometimes it is asked for us because we do report for some projects, like lead reports and things like that, that we're reporting that material. So how much material we're hauling. So.
And to use the point, that's the heaviest material. So my question for Fred is, what happens if a truck pulls up with a load of concrete that hasn't been processed? Are you crushing that on site?
So Vice Chair Horland, yes, we do. We have two facilities that accept concrete here in Broward County. Our Deerfield East processing facility does receive it. We do the processing at the base of Monarch Hill and then at Oaks Road. At each of those facilities, we do issue weight slips for that material. And then we have pre-negotiated rates for inbound customers as they come in for the material, whether it's clean concrete or dirty where it has protruding rebar.
But I think taking it directly, we're talking about the environment and we're burning diesel to take it somewhere that's not ready to take, they're taking it somewhere else to process it. Like, we take it directly to the crusher. That's, or to a lake. It's utilizing to fill in that lake. But that material has the shortest trip. So when you're talking about emissions, and we do it better than anyone else when it comes to the concrete material.
Right, and I have been on site for a project where they've actually brought the concrete crusher in and done that on site, obviously with a larger project, and we would be able to save the emissions on that. I have a question, just pivoting for a moment for the processors. What limits the recycling rate at facilities? Is it processing capability or the post-processing market, and how can the facilities increase the recycling rate? Either Coastal or Waste Management, if you want to weigh in.
Ask the question one more time, Vice Chair, so make sure I answer correctly.
So basically, what limits the recycling rate at the facilities? Is the processing capability or the post-market capabilities? And what can be done on site to improve those recycling rates?
So I said earlier, and I would say the biggest limit is the quality of inbound material that comes in. If we're bringing in theory, roll-off loads from a demolition site where they've harvested concrete, harvested metal, we're left with predominantly residual material. The quality of material dictates our effectiveness. From a processing standpoint, I believe Coastal, WM, any processor, we have strikingly similar equipment. We have similar mechanisms. They have the same functionality, the same outputs or similar outputs. It really is dictated by the material coming in. And I'm not discouraging harvesting the concrete, the metals, the low-hanging fruit, that Mr. Maya called it. That's advantageous. Obviously, this doesn't track for that material, but what comes in dictates our ability to process. There is a small amount that's on markets. We talked about plastics. I believe Mr. Abel did. I did. if we look at the broader scope of C&D tonnage in Broward County, plastics are a de minimis amount. They are there, but if I got a handful of rocks versus a handful of plastic, we can obviously see which one's going to weigh more on the scale.
Thank you, Fred.
Exact same thing. I mean, it's the inbound material. These gentlemen talking about concrete. We have, I think there isn't a contract that doesn't understand that. First of all, their cost is driven by weight. We're looking at their weight. So we, as the hauler now, where we can, with this space, they're asking for a separate C&D can, and we do exactly what these gentlemen do. We have our own aggregate facility where we bring it to, we crush the rock, but it's separate from bringing it into the MRF, and it bypasses the MRF. So you don't get that diversion rate. You don't get the ability to drive that diversion rate. So yes, it's all the material, and everybody, like I said, contractors alike, everybody realizes that our cost as the haulers, whether it's Waste Management, us, Panzarella, or anybody else, it's cost plus weight, and that's how the charges are, and we can obviously help the customers by diverting the C&D directly, not charging them, and they realize that we're going to crush it and use it for aggregate. That's what we do. So it's on smaller scales, larger scales. The demo people, they come in with the tractor trailers and pull this. When they're knocking down these buildings, they come in and use their 65-yard dump trailers to take the concrete directly to the lakes and things like that. So, but as for coastal, we have an aggregate facility, but the concrete sometimes just does not get mixed in with the other material, and you don't get that high percentage. And while we're talking the other effect on our diversion rates in general, and it's a whole other topic where I ask y'all to really understand how Broward County works, is the ADC. That obviously is a huge piece, and how what the regs are, where it can go, how can it be counted, and things like that. So I just just throw that out there for the next time, because it's we all, I think somebody said it, that 50% is a goal. It shouldn't be, you get punished for it, and it's it's a commodity. It's the concrete and the wood and everything else is a commodity, no different than the commodities we see on TV, whether they're gold or soybean or this and that. They're absolutely affected by markets, by construction, by inflation, and things are worth things today they may not be worth tomorrow, and vice versa. So it's those are the kind of things that, as we do it, and as an industry, and I'll just finish with this, we have been recycling. I think the first recycling line went up in the late 1990s. Diversion has been a key. And when you don't have a landfill to put it in, you divert to save the cost. So we've been, as an industry, have been diverting for a while. We've been getting better and better at it. Waste Management wants to conserve their airspace as much as possible. And we don't want to add to the airspace. We want to try to conserve and makes us all competitive, all of us. So we have been recycling. We know it's pretty. As complex as we think we make it, it's a pretty simple thing. So the machinery, today's technology gets it done, and you're only going to get to a certain point. You're only going to get to a certain level, and what recycling, we all want to do it. So it should be a goal, should be let's try to achieve this. But again, I think somebody said to be held over our head as a threshold and against some sort of enforcement is it's not going to do anybody any good. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? I've got a question. Actually, that was one of them. Actually, the flexibility of the market, the impact that it would have, and I think that's been established. Did want to ask, since we're in a rather unique position in Broward County, we have private enterprise that is dominating the field here. I'm curious to know about what. Not sure how to put this. Under the present proposed ordinance, possibly, let's start there. What would this do to the operations of the people sitting around this table? How would that impact you, either favorably or not? Boy, you reached for that button really quick, didn't you? Okay, go ahead.
I mean, to make a comment, I would like to understand that, because I think what we do is a great service. Because by collecting the concrete material, the heaviest material, and hauling it in the most efficient way. So and also helping with the stormwater pollution prevention plan, helping the builders, the home builders, follow that SWIP plan that they need to follow, that they're required to follow by the EPA. So that's kind of something I'm just want to understand, because we're a smaller part of the business, but that's something that we do. We help general contractors, home builders.
All right, thank you. Now, specifically, maybe the general contractors could chime in here. What would this proposed plan mean to you as far as your financial statements?
We are a trade association, so we represent 564 commercial general contractors and ancillary businesses like direct haulers and subcontractors. And ultimately, this is a regulatory burden that'll drive up costs that will be passed along to the customers. And so, it's going to impact our members negatively because of the cost incomplete. And labor, we're already facing a massive labor shortage in Florida on job sites. So this is an additional person on the payroll and a role we have to find and fill. Thank you for having us be a part of this discussion and roundtable and hearing from our industry today. I appreciate it.
Okay. And Murphs, any comment?
I'll tell you, look, for me, contractually, right now, administrative costs come out of a flat percentage of my contract value for affordable housing. That's just the way it's set up, right? So for me, it would directly affect my bottom line, whatever administrative burden comes from there. It depends on your contract, but and if it's not set up that way, ultimately that cost is going to get passed along to the client. Listen, we'll figure it out, whatever comes out at the end of the day. But somebody's going to pay the cost, and at the end of the day, it'll probably end up on the developer, who's already every minute they're looking for pennies to save.
And do you see any of the supposedly the extra recycling benefit, something that would be saved from the landfill, would possibly replace that administrative cost?
Unless the landfills are going to start charging us less, I don't see that, right? Tipping fees aren't going down. I don't see that happening. Right?
Commodities are commodities, so unless the the demand for a material that we'd be able to recover skyrockets somewhere that we can to move it, then no, probably not.
Okay, I was thinking mostly of the quantity rather than.
I think there's an opportunity with this, though, to capture some of the material that is being recycled or reused, that's not going into your data right now. I think that's valuable somehow, and I don't really have to create an ordinance for it, but some way to capture that would be useful.
Yeah, to speak to that real quickly. So under current state legislation, the lake fill, all that stuff does count. The alternative daily cover counts as recycling credits towards the county's goal. And so we would not want to dissuade you from, what you're doing already with that. It, would count. I know from my previous work in Hillsborough County, Florida, we would speak to the concrete processors to try to get any data that they had so that we can include that as non-certified tons in the annual report. And that alone increased the recycling rate quite a bit. As an example, we had one project that I think demoed like 60,000 tons of concrete from a big bridge. We knew about it. We knew the contractor that was awarded. They gave us that tonnage. That one piece of paper that they didn't have to weren't required to provide to the county was equivalent to the entire curbside single stream recycling program. So
I'd be happy to share that information with you on everything that's done in Broward County or any county that we work in.
Right. So getting to the talked about the yearly recycling rate fluctuating quite a bit. It is a little bit of a numbers game as to everything that you can count does count towards the state law, but not everything has to be counted, right? And so there might be an opportunity there to look at that in a way that's not overly burdensome, to capture some of the material that is going to the right spot already, and that alone would increase the recycling rate without really changing your current operations, just the reporting framework.
I got a question. How many other businesses are there out there like your business that does the recovery on the concrete?
There's a couple that do, because our container, we have a welding shop and we build our own containers, and they get beat up because the concrete's they're dropping it. There's a lot of work to maintain those sealed containers, but Coastal, they pick up concrete only. Waste Management does as well, but that's kind of like what we focus on. Is the only thing that we do is concrete. So
we're trying to figure out how much is actually getting by without being reported.
I think it would go back to them because, for us, we haul that material, but I don't know how they track their material when they put a concrete dumpster out, because I think we all recycle in the most efficient way, and if they have a dumpster that's full of concrete, I would think that they would take it straight to the crusher. They have their own crushing facilities. We use their facilities at times too. So I think they would take it. I can't speak for them, but I would say that they take it directly. So I don't know if it's how it's counted or tracked. I can't.
Some of these places have on-site crushers. They come out there, as you said, and will crush on site, so you can utilize that material right on site, and that's certainly not getting counted for. Yeah.
But then especially for like where we come in is like in downtown areas, especially, or for home builders, but in downtown areas where there's not much room and they can't wash out on, build a pit on the ground because it's going to go into the storm drain and then into the canals and then into the the waterways and kill fish. And so that's kind of like where, especially on the downtown areas, we work well.
I got a question. If it's, I don't know if it's meaningful or not or makes any sense, but if at the state level, C&D, right, or specific materials were reclassified as recoverable materials, would that in any way affect the franchise agreements that exist and make it a more competitive market, helping cost? Does that question make any sense? So I mean, right now, right, if there's a franchise agreement in the city, I have to take it there, right? It's got to go there. So you kind of got to lock on it, but it limits competition for that material at the end of the day. So if it was kind of an open market for everybody, would that create an opportunity for that material price to come down, or cost to the hauler to come down?
There's a lot in that question. There's a lot of puts and takes, and each individual franchise agreement's different.
Right.
I don't think that either one of us could say what direction it would take things. It would change things. It would be different, but I don't even want to opine on what the outcome would be.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's there's a lot of moving parts to that.
Right.
Where the C&D hauling is part of a contract, calculated into the contract on the commercial rate, residential rates, disposal. I mean, so there are a lot of moving pieces to say that, I don't know, to say how that would affect it would take a good roundtable discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, just wanted to share. I do have to adjourn and head out this time. Are there any further questions? I appreciate the time to work with our partners in the industry, the folks on the board, the contractors, so forth. No one has an easy task here, and I applaud you for putting forth the effort and taking the. I don't think it ends today, but are there any further questions before I head out?
No, it's a great
At
conversation.
this point, I think we're.
Appreciate the opportunity. Look forward to talking more.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
coming in. Okay. And I don't know if, are there any other further questions or comments? Anyone from the audience, anyone online have any questions?
I do not see Mr. Kelleher here today, but I did have a question that I think should be asked of him. We need a clarification on the committal of the municipalities of their C&D to the interlocal agreement. At the last C&D subcommittee, he made the statement that it was not required to take it. My initial reading way back when was there was a block, it had 3 boxes, bulk, C&D, and yard waste. And it said, bulk, C&D, and yard waste. And it said non-binding. But apparently, since those municipalities checked off, it's now binding. So when Mr. Kelleher got up to speak at the last C&D subcommittee, he said, no, it's not. So we need a clarification on that once and for all, because that happens to be something that everybody is interested in. Does the material have to go to that system, or can it be direct called to whoever that franchise holder might be, or whoever, whatever MRF the municipality wants to contract with? And I think that's very important. Frankly, why that material was even included in a system that can only handle 750,000 tons per year currently and has a contract for 1.2 million tons annually, which means that 500,000 tons has to be transported and trucked away. That never made any sense. But that's a whole nother issue to get into. So if we can get a clarification on the C&D bulk and yard waste portion of that, I think that'll be beneficial to a lot of the people that are interested in this.
That's one of the many questions that have to come up and be answered. Are there any other questions, comments? Then we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. So second, motion is passed.